And we're live.
What up, world? It's Radioactive Podcast. It's your boy Ace Boogie, and we have a special guest with us today. We have the Brown Berets with us today. And guys, I need you guys to introduce yourselves so people can know who you are. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Khan Outly, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs.
My name is Wolfgang, like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. My pronouns are he, them.
My name is Felix. My pronoun is he, his.
I'm Mars. My pronouns are her, she.
My name is Ye Mr. Walpin, he, him.
All right, guys. So, first question here is, who are the Brown Berets? So, who would like to answer first?
So basically, whenever we get asked that question, who are the Brown Berets, we always, to make it plain and simple, we always compare ourselves to the Black Panther Party because a lot of people are familiar with the Black Panthers as opposed to the Brown Berets or the American Indian Movement, Yellow Peril, Young Lords. Most people are familiar with the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So basically, we do a lot of the work that the Black Panthers used to do back in the day, as far as helping the community empower itself, working on feeding the people, working on education, promoting Chicano studies through grades K, community college, and university level. We do help families affected by police brutality, and we also help families affected by the broken immigration law that has pinned the authorities against our people, and it's been like that for a long time. So basically, in a nutshell, the Brown Berets is a Chicano liberation front to help empower our people and to liberate them from oppression.
If I can add to that also, there are other Brown Beret chapters. There's a national Brown Beret organization. Our organization, we are the Autonomous Brown Berets in San Antonio. We are our own chapter. We were founded in 2016. And the primary brunt of our work is done in the area of San Antonio, what our ancestors called Yanawana. We do work outside of our community. You know, if we're doing a mass mobilization with other organizations, different movements, but our work is primarily centered in San Antonio, and our group is not formally affiliated with any other Brown Beret chapter. So if you hear about any other Brown Beret chapter that isn't the Autonomous Brown Beret in San Antonio, that's not the work that we're doing. We do our own work here with the Autonomous Brown Berets.
So, I'm wondering, who all do y'all represent? Y'all only, for instance, help with the Hispanic and Latin communities, or as far as that goes, who all y'all cater to?
So, first I'd like to just correct you on the term that you're using, Hispanic. Hispanic is a colonial term used to describe people of Spanish descent living here in the United States. While we do have Spanish blood running through our veins, that blood is the result of rape and 500 years of European colonial occupation. So we do not consider ourselves Hispanic or Latino. We are indigenous. We are indigenous to Yanawana, which is here in San Antonio. We are indigenous to Anahuac, which is North America. We are indigenous to Semanahuac, which is both South and North America. So that is something I do want to correct you on, because it is something that for a lot of indigenous people, it's a hot button issue. It's something that we do consider, or as I do consider, a slur, Hispanic.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. And as far as whether or not we yes, our focus is on our people, but we will always stand in solidarity with all oppressed people. Our black brothers and sisters, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, anybody, LGBTQ brothers and sisters, our trans brothers and sisters, everybody who feels oppressed and scared, especially right now, with the man in the Oval Office. You had two mass shootings, or three, but the two last week that we know were racially motivated. So that's the work that's the reason we do what we do. We see the need for militant organization against not only right-wing fascists, but politicians who are sympathetic or apologetic to that type of ideology. But yeah, we will stand with anybody who is oppressed and feels oppressed.
Okay,
Speak louder.
okay. So who are y'all's founders? Y'all know founders?
So, like the comrade said, we have no formal ties with any other Brown Beret organization. However, the Brown Berets did come about during the late 1960s. 1966, group of high school kids came together, organized what they called then the Young Citizens for Community Action, which was later changed to Young Chicano for Community Action. The people who started those organizations back in the 60s, while we do hold them in regard and high regard, for the work they did, none of us became berets because of them. We became berets because we knew that there are people they needed somebody who was going to fight for them, that looked like them, that talked like them, that didn't do what most politicians do.
So it definitely needs somebody to represent that. Like,
Exactly.
so are they able to hear us? Is everybody able to hear us? You know,
No, they said to speak louder.
it said speak louder. It might need to turn on the speakers.
So going off of what the hermano said about our founders of the Brown Berets, like he said, we don't hold any formal affiliations with the older Brown Beret generation, the first generation of the Brown Berets. Essentially, they came about in the 60s, and like all civil rights movements, there's an amount of FBI, CIA infiltration, infighting, splintering, and whatnot that eventually dissolved the social protest movement. And like I said, it happens to pretty much all civil rights movements, unfortunately. But with the Brown Berets, our group, like the other hermano here was saying, our group was founded in 2016 by us, just regular people who live in the barrios here in San Antonio, who saw a need for mobilization, saw a need for militancy on the streets. Things aren't going to change just by going to the ballot box and block walking for politicians. We need to step it up a notch, and when I say step it up a notch, that means go above and beyond what an activist is doing or is comfortable doing. We regularly step out of our comfort zone to aid the people, defend the people, and just get the job done. So our group, although we are very young, we have accomplished a lot for the community of San Antonio. We are currently working with the family of Charles Brownshee Jr., which it's unfortunate, that this young man, 18 years old, did lose his life to a San Antonio police officer. who shot him in cold blood, even though he had no weapon. He wasn't posing a threat to him at all. The officer literally just walked up to the door and without even introducing himself, all he said was, "Hey, what's up?" He felt his life was in danger and he shot into the house and he struck 18-year-old Charles Roundtree Jr. But we are helping his family right now. Yesterday we went to a little bit of a heated vigil where there were some tow truck companies trying to mess with the participants of the vigil, trying to tow their cars. So we stepped it up and we got in the way of the tow truck. We jumped on the equipment. We talked a whole bunch of trash and basically we made sure that these people were able to get out there, mourn the loss of their loved one, and do so peacefully. So we're the ones who will be aggressive so that the peace is kept in the movement and in the community.
So when you guys step in and do things like that, jump on equipment things, I mean, you don't have any type of fear of going to jail and so forth?
It's not any more fear of what we have to deal with on a daily basis as oppressed people. So it's either we sit home and just take it, or we stand up and try to do something about it. So for me, I can't just sit back and have thoughts and prayers that things will change. I need to get out there and take some action, direct action. So the fear is there whether you're active or not, because you can be that person, you can be Charles Roundtree sitting at your friend's house on a sofa getting shot by a cop. So that's my thought on it.
By the way, Charles Roundtree, when he was shot, he was not the intended target. The man who was the intended target was later arrested and found not guilty of weapons possession. So, Officer Steve Casanova shot Charles Roundtree, an 18-year-old man, kid, really, for nothing.
And if I could also add on to this, speaking about Charles' story, and going back to your question about whom we align ourselves with, we're very much, our group is very much of the principle of intersectionality, meaning that we recognize that all peoples who are subjugated by the empire, we have a shared struggle. Our black people, our brown people, our people who are migrating, our queer people, that we all have a shared, we're all being targeted by this colonial system that has worked against us for the last several centuries, that has been the proponent of capitalism, of white supremacy, of misogyny, of homophobia and heteronormativity. So we very much, our purpose here is to serve, educate, and to protect our community. So if it is affecting our community, affecting, right outside our front door, we're going to be there, which is why we're there right now for the family of Charles Roundtree. I think it's very pertinent to make the point that SAPD is, as we speak right now, they protect and they employ murderers with our tax dollars. We pay for the equipment that they use, we pay for the clothes that they wear, we pay for the house that they live in, we pay for the vehicle that they drive, we pay for the toys that their children play with. And there's zero accountability. Chief McManus swept this under the rug for months on end. They don't want us to be talking about this right now. That body cam video, because the incident took place, several months ago, and the body cam video just came out about a month ago. After the fact, when typically we will see the evidence that we put forward at a faster rate. But and I'll say this, Chief McManus, DA Joe Gonzalez, and the courts are all complicit in this inaction, being that they recently decided not to indict Officer Steve Casanova, who is a predator in my opinion, somebody who's itching to pull the trigger. They chose not to indict him, and he still has a job on the force where, again, every one of us here in this room is paying his salary. and he gets to walk out of the courtroom with a gun on his waist, you know? I wouldn't feel safe in the vicinity of that man with a gun. So that's why we do the work that we do, because we see that shit is very twisted, you know? And we just can't sit idly by with that.
I do want to mention real quick that Charles Roundtree is not the only young black man who's been shot. In 2014, Marquise Jones was also shot. Who was that? Marquise Jones. He was shot at a Chachos by an off-duty police officer by the name of Robert Encina. That was in 2014. Robert Encina was also found not guilty. We also work with the Jones family for their loss, the same way we're working with Charles Roundtree's family now. So this isn't a one-off thing. This is something that is happening in San Antonio, in Texas, in the United States, and we see it almost every day. I can't get on my social media page and not see a video of some type of police brutality, police harassment, or someone being killed by a cop. So if people think that this is just a one-off thing, or that these guys are thugs, whatever, that's a bunch of bullshit. Charles Roundtree was an 18-year-old kid who had his whole life ahead of him and was taken away for nothing. Same thing with Marquise Jones.
Okay. So as far as the Brown Berets go, are y'all a social group, political group, a nonprofit? What do you got?
Well, we're definitely not a nonprofit. Definitely not.
Can you talk louder?
We're definitely not a nonprofit.
Okay.
We are a social activist group. But I would say we would be classified as more radical because of the actions that we're willing to take. And we are willing to get arrested if we have to. We are willing to, like the hermano said, climb on equipment to stop tow trucks from taking, people who are trying to grieve. We'll do that. We'll put ourselves in danger so that way people can be safe.
Okay. So there was a point in time in you guys' history that the women weren't feeling appreciated per se. They were feeling like the work they were putting in wasn't being recognized. So today,
It's still that way.
It's still that way today. Well, I mean, I was watching a documentary and it said that the men immediately put a change to it. So, but you're saying is this a slow process? Is that what it is?
Well, it's a slow process, yes. The hermanos in this group have come a long way. A lot of people have come a long way, but people are still conditioned a certain way not to respect women equally, and that's in every aspect. So as much as I would like to say that my voice counts just as much as my brothers, the men in my life, I need them to back me up because it validates what I'm saying, because people are conditioned to listen to me and the things that I'm saying as a woman. So it's a slow process.
As the men up here, what can you guys do to have her back, to help her, feel different, feel like she has a voice? So I want to know what individually, what do you guys do to help her have a voice?
I would say one of the things that at least I personally practice is using my ears a lot more than my mouth. And just understanding that when an hermana in the group or when an hermana we're organizing with is speaking strongly, is being aggressive, it's a matter of embracing that anger and saying that comes from somewhere, and it's being used productively, and expressing those, and when an hermana is expressing herself, no matter how she's expressing herself, it comes from a place of support and respect for us, the hermanos. So for example, if an hermana was upset about something, about how she doesn't feel backed up in the group, she doesn't feel supported, and she's speaking out about that, maybe even in an aggressive or even profane way, it's a matter of reminding myself that she's telling us this so that from a place of support and respect and love for all of us, that she's not trying to silence male voices, she's not trying to make males feel ashamed, and that she's giving us a roadmap to say, hey, this is how we can move forward together.
She's also beating y'all, so y'all better be careful. So.
No?
She said no.
I want to add to that. So it's difficult because, like I said, people aren't, not even women are conditioned to listen to women with the same amount of respect that they listen to men. So it's generations of the colonial mindset that has put us in this position. So when women get angry or they don't smile, it's because it's a constant battle to be heard and be respected. So sometimes you'll get a man tell you, smile, you look so much prettier when you smile. They wouldn't tell a man that. Why would they tell a woman that? So people need to realize if we really want to be equal, then we need to be treated equally, looked at equally, heard equally, respected equally, everything. And it's hard because people's minds aren't conditioned that way. We've had so many hundreds of years, maybe longer than that, where it's just, it's not set up for us.
So are you the only female in this group?
No.
Okay, cool. So, how easy was it for you guys to make the decision to integrate and even represent the LGBTQ community? How quick was that? I mean, was that something I had to think about as a group?
One of the major problems with the old generation, the first generation of the Brown Berets, is that they were very misogynistic, they were very sexist towards the hermanas, and they were also very homophobic, very transphobic. So when we did come together and decide that we're gonna form an autonomous Brown Beret chapter, it was on the basis of acknowledging that the old generation had tainted the Brown Beret name with the LGBT community and also with the mujeres in the Chicana movement. You know, so as a part of our bylaws and our code of conduct, we made it very clear that we would not tolerate any form of misogyny or any form of transphobia or homophobia within our group and within any groups that we may work with. There is an older Brown Beret group here in San Antonio that they are the original group of Brown Berets here in San Antonio. And as a matter of fact, one of their rules is you can't be gay. If you're gay, you can't join the Brown Berets. So they left a very bad taste in some groups, activist groups here in San Antonio. And as soon as we came about and we proved that that's not what we're about, the community just opened their arms up and they embraced us because they see that we're coming out of a place of love and we're trying to correct whatever wrongdoings the Brown Berets did in the past.
I would add very briefly, I came to the Brown Berets from the LGBTQ activist community. I identify as gender fluid, so I present alternately as masculine and feminine. And what has been very awakening to me with this group is from other activist communities, from other leftist circles, and from other centrist sort of progressive Democrat circles, there is still a lot of homophobia and transphobia. So not just from the right, not just from the religious right, but within progressive circles themselves, some of the things we have put out in support of the trans community, in support of the LGBT community, have been met with strong backlash from other people who would count themselves as progressives. And I have to speak to the courage that the compañera here on this stage have shown in standing fast and saying, no, if we're not moving forward with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, we can't leave anyone behind. Liberation has to be for everyone. And to speak to what the compañero Felix just said about, if some people don't like that, that was an awakening moment for me. Coming from another progressive circle into this activist circle, not only have they embraced the feminine part of myself, which I can't speak enough about how welcoming that is. I can't speak enough about how much this group embraces liberation. When you look and see that when we post things about trans liberation, there's an immediate and long list of backlash.
If I could add on to that too as well. Again, like the comrade here was just saying, because I've been around other circles, with people who were very radical, very militant in their rhetoric, as far as speaking about white supremacy or capitalism or colonialism and such, but we're still held very fast to this homophobia, or what we call this toxic manifestation of the masculine energy, this sort of unchecked masculine, because the masculine and the feminine exist within each and every one of us, and we all express these things in different ways. It manifests out of us in different ways. But again, and like our comrade Marv said over here, this is about deconditioning and unlearning and decolonizing here, because our queer relatives have always been around. Our queer relatives. It's incredible because this colonial mindset has been something that propagated this homophobia. Whenever the Europeans came over here and they were very rigid in their Christianity, and they began to persecute our queer people or our two-spirit people here, and they began to say it is something that's unholy. But the thing is, LGBT people have existed and have served and have, contributed to our communities and indigenous cultures around the world for thousands of years prior to, this empire, this colonial mindset. So, it's just, again, this isn't even, I would say, moving forward. This is honoring those who have come before us, whenever we, we want to be seen as human, we need to, it just, because if somebody's going to disregard you based on that one aspect of yourself, that means they don't see you as fully human, and we can't, it's just incredible. People can't claim to be on the side of, fighting for human rights if they're still dehumanizing other people.
Speaking of the rights, what exactly were the indigenous people doing during the civil rights movement? Anybody want to speak on that?
When you say indigenous, do you mean here in the United States or in the continent? Or okay, so basically, with the indigenous community in the 1960s and 70s, the American Indian movement emerged, and they are a spiritual group. They do practice spirituality first, as quote unquote American Indians, indigenous people here in the United States, and they follow a lot of the same militancy that other groups like the Brown Berets or the Black Panthers did. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a rainbow coalition between the Black Panthers, the Brown Berets, A.M, the Young Lords representing the Puerto Ricans, and different groups like that, because they all realize, even though they represent different groups of people, oppressed people, they all do have a common enemy, which is the government, which is 500 years of colonialism that has impacted and enslaved our people, that has oppressed our people and exploited our people, exploited our traditions and our culture and our way of life, that has taken away our languages and our memory of who we are as people. So the indigenous movement in the 1960s, it was very strong. It is still strong today. What's very beautiful about it today is that the Chicano movement is very ingrained, is becoming very, very one with the indigenous movement as well. Because us as Chicanos, even though we may call ourselves Mexicans or Mexican Americans or Chicanos, we are indigenous. The border, the southern border and the northern border, those are colonial borders. And those did not exist prior to the European invasion of the Americas, when they sliced up the land, the same way they sliced up Africa for profit and for resources. They sliced up this continent. So there is no difference in bloodline between Apache, Aztec, Chichimeca. You go up north with the Inuits, with the people, with the native people in Canada. There is no difference in bloodline. And it's beautiful that now the younger generation is starting to embrace that the American Indians in the United States, that before there was a little bit of a difference, they're starting to embrace they're two in one people. And what's even more beautiful about it is that there's a very famous prophecy amongst a couple of different indigenous civilizations, which is the eagle and the condor. And the prophecy goes that the eagle and the condor always flew separately. They would sometimes fight in the sky, but eventually the eagle and the condor will fly together. And when they do fly together, peace, there will be peace on the land of Semanawai. And the condor represents the southern part of the Americas, which is South America and Central America and Mexico. And the eagle represents the northern part of the Americas, which is what we know as the United States and Canada. So we see that prophecy coming true today. We see it coming true in instances like Standing Rock, where all these native nations came together, from up north, from down south. They all came together to defend this land and to defend the water, because water is life, to defend our way of life and our native customs. We see it in the Rio Grande Valley right now with the border wall situation. A lot of native tribes are coming together because they're not focusing on the difference between Mexican American or American Indian and our relatives down south. They're seeing it as just another act of colonialism, just another act of raping this land and trying to cause divisions on this land and exploiting its resources. So to answer your question, it's really beautiful the way it's all coming together. Even though we have our little differences, I think we have a lot more in common with our indigenous movement here today.
Question. So we hear a lot about what happened to black people during Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement. We always hear about the hangings and the bashing of them. But things happened to the Chicanos as well. And I think my people need to hear what you guys went through back then as well, knowing that it wasn't just African Americans.
Well, the exact same thing that happened to your people happened to my people. We were lynched, we were hung, we were thrown to fires. Yeah, our Mexican landowners were killed and lynched by white settlers to take their land. During the 1960s, there was segregation that affected us the same way it affected your people. when it came to housing inequality, job inequality, the lack of political representation. What I tell a lot of people, especially my black brothers and sisters who ever ask me, is our people's struggle is one and the same. Where your people were stolen from Africa, brought over here as slaves, my people were decimated on their own land. You know?
When you say your own land, what do you mean? Because, like, for instance, Texas was Mexico at one point in time.
Well, what you need to realize is Mexico is also a colonial state.
What exactly does that mean?
Mexico, when Mexico fought for its independence, it wasn't the indigenous people of that land. They were the mestizos, they were the people of Spanish descent, people who were born in Mexico but of Spanish descent. They're the ones who fought for their independence from Spain. So what I mean by my people of this land, I mean indigenous people, I mean Yanawana. Yanawana is the name of San Antonio. That is the name of the city. That is the name of the Bayaya people of this area called San Antonio, was Yanawana.
And you know, even in visiting with my grandmothers and hearing from their experiences, you know, because I'm sure, you know, y'all hear from y'all's grandparents and they talk about what they went through, you know, which is very not far separated from us at all, really, you know. My grandma on my father's side, you know, in a town called Floresville, Texas, she used to tell us about how in the movie theater the Chicanos used to need to enter through the back, you know, and needed to, you know, sit separately, or they would have separate show times or what have you, you know. So I mean, this is all, you know, it's not very far off of, you know, from where we're at right now, you know. So yeah, there was a lot of overlap with what was experienced. I mean, the Texas Rangers very much hunted down, you know, brown people here in Texas for decades, and you know, the Texas Rangers. Are y'all familiar with like can you break it down? The Texas Rangers?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the Texas Rangers were set up basically after the independence, after Texas won its independence from Mexico, and basically the Texas Rangers, their main objective was to clear the land for Anglo people to move in and to start farms and to start cultivating the land, and more than it had already done. So what I mean by that is basically you had this was all Mexican land, and you had farmers, you had vaqueros, you had haciendas and whatnot, and the objective of the Texas Rangers was to initiate scare tactics, lynchings, remove people by force from their land. Even if they had land grants, even if they owned the land legally, the Texas Rangers would go and clear the land for Anglo settlement.
Are they something like ICE today?
Well, ICE isn't trying to take the land from us, they're just trying to prevent our indigenous brothers and sisters from coming to land that they used to migrate to naturally. So the land has already been taken. So ICE is basically putting fear tactics into our indigenous brothers and sisters, trying to keep them in their place, on their side, what they call their side of the border. The people coming into the United States are not coming here to just party and have a good time. You know, they're coming here because they're suffering at great measures where they are, and a lot of it has to do with by the hands of the United States. So it's not like their own homes and the places that they live it's being done to them by their own people. It's being done because the United States has had hands in a lot of places around the world that people are suffering. So the border is is a line drawn in the sand by white men. And that's a fact. That's not a myth, that's a fact. So it's an imaginary line that somebody decided, a white man decided, you know, you stay there, we're going to stay over here. And so when people are migrating, trying to find a better life, they did that for thousands of years, migrating. So I don't know if I answered that question. I kind of got off that.
I still like this.
What was the question again?
So let's play off of each other here. Basically, ice.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, ice
I was
comes.
wondering if ice was like, how does ice compare to the rain?
Ice is like the
Terror-
Gestapo.
Yeah,
They're like the Nazis.
they're
like
a
the
terrorist
Nazis,
organization.
Yeah, domestic terrorism.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas the Texas Rangers, they were like the people that really pushed and enforced manifest destiny. You know, manifest destiny basically back in the 1800s. Anglo people, settlers, colonizers, they believed that it was God's will to conquer all the way, to conquer the United States, to conquer this continent from coast to coast. So the Texas Rangers came in to push the brown people out by any means necessary to make room for more of the Anglo people coming in to settle the land. As opposed to ICE, is a domestic terrorist organization. They're breaking a lot of laws. They are terrorizing people. They're tearing families apart. They're sexually abusing our children, and man, the list goes on.
Well,
On and on.
and playing off of what you're saying right there, I suppose we can say that in a sense that the Texas Rangers and ICE, they do and did ultimately serve the same purpose, which is a white hegemony over the land. Because there's the sort of damage is being inflicted at the border, primarily on children, the most vulnerable. This is sabotaging an entire generation to come forward. This is going to inflict an incredible amount of trauma that may or may not be overcome. And it's all very much done in the spirit of maintaining this white hegemony, because, obviously we see the statistics, coming out that white folks are having fewer children across, not only in the United States, but in all of these majority white countries in Europe or in Australia, and that obviously non-white people are migrating to these so-called first world countries because their countries are in such terrible conditions due to Western intervention. So again, in that sense, these white folks sort of made their own bed, and now they got to sleep in it, based on the sort of subjugation and that they've done across the world with the thieving of resources, massacring people, and or displacing people. So now it's all it's really just what goes around comes back around. But again, the people that are coming to the border, they're not coming with the mindset of violence. They're coming with looking to seek peace and just simply to live in peace. Again, to live as human beings. You see these people. We all think about for our people, how many people in the room who are parents. But if you're a parent and you're in a dire situation with your child, the love of a parent is strong. A parent would do anything for their child to be safe. So, these people, they're migrating, especially from Central America, from places like Honduras or Guatemala, and they migrate all the way through Mexico, where they face a significant amount of discrimination, and they make it to the American border. But it's only once we reach the American border that children end up dying. Children end up dying at the American border. They don't die in Mexico, they die at the U.S. border, on this land, on this side of the border. So that's how dire the situation is. So again, a lot of it really does have to do with the sort of the white supremacist mindset. The white supremacists, they really sort of psychologically project onto non-white people and fear that non-white people will treat them the same way that they've treated the rest of the world.
What made y'all join? I'll definitely like to hear each one of y'all's stories as to why y'all joined in the first place.
My story of coming to the Berets is one of transition. I was on the other side of this equation in an official capacity. I defected from the U.S. Border Patrol several years ago. And it wasn't until a year ago when I began to see.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
I served as a U.S. Border Patrol agent.
Really?
And I quit that job. I did. And my path to the Brown Berets was because I had put those years behind me and moved on with my life in San Antonio. I got married. I have a simple job. I just counted myself as a Democrat, as a liberal. I felt like the solution to a lot of the racism and violence and poverty and everything else that we see in our community was to vote, was to go and vote, was to go support candidates and vote, and that's the way through. I have to say, the abuse, the murder, the rape, the horrendous treatment of immigrant people, which has now become commonplace behavior of the Department of Homeland Security, as a former employee of theirs, shocked me to my core. And I reached a stage where I couldn't sit quietly and just let that be. I began to reach out to different organizations and explain what I used to do and asked, how can I bring that experience to your circle to work against that machine? And this is the first group that really embraced how I'd like to participate in that way. That's what brought me here.
You kind of come off Caucasian looking in a sense. Is that a struggle within the Brown Berets for you?
Yes, so full disclosure, yeah, I'm 100% Caucasian.
Oh, really?
But I want to speak to the fact that the autonomy of this group. So the fact that this is an autonomous beret circle, that we are not connected to any kind of national Brown Beret hierarchy. I feel like there are the autonomy of having autonomous beret circles. The benefit of that is there are going to be people who come into this type of work, Chicano people, indigenous people, people of color who come into this type of work who are going to be uncomfortable working with a Caucasian person. So I have great respect for that boundary. There are going to be some beret groups that would prefer not to put a wool beret on the head of a white person. And I totally agree with that. This beret group, and again, because we're autonomous, happens to see that path differently. Happens to see that decolonization itself can include non-indigenous people.
So basically, so basically, we won a battle and took them as our captive and re-assimilated them. Yeah. Right. This is basically a continuation of that history. Yeah. How I joined? Well, in the Alamo colleges, I was involved in the Chicano Studies program. I was, very deeply involved in it for maybe about 2 years. Yeah. So that's, the academic portion of, I guess, this front. The educational portion of it. Promoting the history, the culture, the arts of our people. So I was very much involved in that. And through that, I ended up meeting at a conference this one summer at Northwest Vista, which is for it was a workshop of educators on implementing Chicano studies in Texas public schools. Because last year, it was passed based on the Houston TEACs, the educational guidelines, that Chicano studies will soon be implemented. I believe if it's not this coming year, then the year after. that a respected public school district can allow it to be implemented as an elective course. Right, so it's an optional elective course for students to choose. So yeah, I was very much, active on that front, and at a conference at Northwest Vista, I ended up meeting some of the autonomous Brown Berets, got to sit and talk with them. I got contact information from one of them and ended up getting involved in this direct action protesting ICE. And so from then on, I got more and more involved in attending more and more direct actions. And I decided to invest myself in this movement, and that's where I'm at now.
I've only been a Beret for a week. No, I grew up learning about the Brown Berets. Well, not learning, but hearing stories about the Brown Berets. My mom, she grew up in East LA, and that's where originally the Brown Berets started in 1967. So there's a lot of Brown Berets in East Los. You see it on the murals. I got family in San Diego. You got Chicano Park in San Diego. Again, there's a heavy Brown Beret presence over there. The murals, they tell the story of Chicano Park, which basically the Brown Berets, they helped create that park after the city of San Diego wanted to build a highway patrol, sub-patrol station on this piece of land. After basically telling the people of San Diego, Barrio Logan, which was predominantly Mexican, they pretty much told them, well, we don't have enough money in the city to build you all a park, but we're going to build a highway patrol station. And in the 1970s, police brutality was rampant. So the Brown Berets decided, hey, well, we're gonna take over this land, and y'all ain't gonna do shit. We're gonna take over this land. So. Didn't mean to get off the subject, but I grew up hearing stories like these and seeing a lot of murals and a lot of influences that the Brown Berets had in Los Angeles. So when I was younger, that didn't influence me so much to get involved in activism. I got involved with a lot of people that I shouldn't have got involved in, and basically the anger that I felt as a Mexicano in the barrio, in this country, I directed it towards the wrong stuff. And I would get in trouble from time to time. As much as I like reading history and as smart of a kid as I was just hanging out with the wrong people. And one day it just kind of snapped. It was in 2006. When I came to the realization that as much as the street life, the gang life is appealing to me, I see that our people are being put down by, not by each other so much, but by the system. So I got involved in the high school walkouts in 2006 against, I believe it was HR 4437. And this was back in California. I led the high school walkouts at my school, and then in downtown LA, they had there was like over 1 million people that took over the streets in downtown LA. So that's really where my activism peaked for La Raza, and of course, I was interested in the Chicano Power movement.
What is the La Raza?
La Raza is the people. The people. It's a term of endearment for in the Chicano movement. But basically, I became a beret a couple of years after that, as I started meeting different activists and started kind of becoming more militant and fearless in my activism. I decided to put on the beret, and that was about 9 years ago. And it's been a hell of a journey. I've seen a lot of different forms of Brown Berets, a lot of different styles and types of Brown Berets. But basically, this group is an evolution of the Brown Beret movement. And it's a very beautiful evolution, because I believe that we've gotten to the point where we are truly different from what a brown beret is. We're the next step above.
Outside the box beret.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so, so there was a young man we call him Mapache, that was protesting the ICE detention center here in San Antonio. And he had been here on it was DACA? Well, you're right, it was DACA. And he'd been here since he was 2 years old. And they targeted him, they kidnapped him, and they deported him. They expedited his time. They just wouldn't budge. So that story really shook me, and I thought, his family lives here. He doesn't know anything about Mexico. And they forced him to go over there. And he's 18 years old. You know, and that kind of just like blew my mind. So that really kind of just affected me some kind of way. And thinking of my own son, and if that would happen, and you know, how that would just be devastating to me. And then my son got a traffic stop, and was the cops were just very aggressive with him for no reason, just because he was asking questions as to, you know, well, why do you want me to get out of the car? You know, just give me a ticket. It was very simple. Could have been a very simple traffic stop, but it wasn't. They got him out of the car. They were harassing him. They put him in the vehicle. They searched his car. They brought the dogs, the canine unit, to go sniff. They didn't find anything. They ended up writing a false ticket that he had paraphernalia in the car, which apparently they don't know what the definition of paraphernalia is, because they literally got the plastic rubber thing you can get out of the door handle when you clean your car out. Okay, had cigarette ashes. They considered that paraphernalia, that little rubber thing. And so I called the chief of police immediately and demanded to speak to him. I was able to get in contact with him directly. He set a meeting up with me. I was able to watch the video cam, and I was fucking furious. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. Like, it still bothers me. Like, it could have gone really wrong for my son. So that was a major turning point for me. And I just thought, I can't sit back here at home and watch these stories happen and not do anything about it. I need to get out there, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I think I messaged the page, and I was like, how do I get involved? Like, what do I do? I could see the work they were doing, and I was like, how do I get involved? What do I do? So I immediately got a friend request back, and I was like, okay, y'all gotta see what I'm doing, you know, to see what I'm about. And so that's where my journey began. And people don't think that this stuff is going to affect them personally until it affects them personally. And so you can sit back at home and think, you know, well, man, it wasn't me this time. You know, it could be anybody. It's going to affect you eventually. Things are getting worse. Police brutality is getting worse. And if we don't start speaking up against it and uniting and trying to do something about it, this gang, which we call the people that are supposed to protect and serve us, because they're a gang. They're going to continue to kill people of color, children. I mean, I can just go on and on. You know, they literally, this guy that just did this mass shooting in El Paso is white. Eric Garner was selling cigarettes on the side of the street. They killed him. They choked him out and killed him. And this guy, they handled him with care. He shot 20 people and killed 20 people. They handled him with care and put him in the car, in the police car. If that was a person of color, they would have shot him on the spot. No questions asked. And that shit's got to stop. And if y'all ain't doing anything about it out there, y'all need to start doing something about it. That's where I started.
Leave to women, boy. Women get things done.
My journey started in 2015 when Donald Trump called Mexicans rapists and thieves. That's when I got involved in activism. I started working with groups here in the city. I did peacekeeping for the big protest when Donald Trump came to San Antonio at the country club off Fredericksburg. I was there as a peacekeeper. I saw the level of hostility Donald Trump awoke in a lot of people, even back then. What really got me to say, I'm not just going to be a liberal activist, I'm going to be a radical activist, I'm going to join the berets, was when Donald Trump criticized an American judge because he was Mexican American. Because he was second generation Mexican American. His parents were born in Mexico. That meant that this judge, an American born judge, could not proceed over a case against him because he was going to be unfair. To me, that hit close to home because that's me. You know? My grandfather was born in Mexico. I'm third generation. Or second generation, you know? So that to me told, it was a sign that it doesn't matter if I follow the rules, it doesn't matter how I dress, how I speak, I'm always gonna be a color. You know, and that's the reality for all of us. It doesn't matter if you dress a certain way, if you have a certain job, if you live in a certain neighborhood. If you're a person of color, your white neighbors are going to look at you different. They may not say it to your face, but I promise you that they see you different. And any attempt to try to befriend them or try to assimilate into that type, into the American culture, I see as a betrayal to our people, especially with what we've gone through as a people. So yeah, that was my journey to the parade.
Okay. So I did have the question, can only Chicanos join the Brown Berets, but obviously not. Would y'all happen to have any black Brown Berets?
No, would you want to join us?
Why y'all be a Brown Beret, y'all? I'll be a Brown Beret. Okay, we'll get into the...
We'll give you a questionnaire after the podcast.
Oh, I'm ready, y'all. I'm ready.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, yes. I'm sorry. My sister Ayoka. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think of her as more indigenous. I see her as an indigenous person.
Okay.
We relate in a lot in that way. So I'm sorry. Yes. My sister and Victor.
So I'm gonna ask y'all. So we all have our own little hood stories, our own body of stories. You know what I mean? Pretty much showing our struggle. So for instance, when I was younger, we used to, people used to put their mattresses out by the dumpster, and we used to lay them down and do backflips on them all the time. You know what I mean? Do y'all have your own little stories? You know, your own struggle stories?
Yeah, I do. We used to, we didn't have any kind of games and stuff, and we didn't have TV. If we did, it was like one TV, and usually a parent was watching it. We couldn't watch it. So we ran around outside a lot, and we used to get those little, the little spears that grow up out of the grass. So we used to throw those at each other, and then we used to get, we had a nice oak tree. We used to get acorns and slingshot each other and do stuff like that for entertainment. We also used to have like this big hill of dirt in the front yard. My dad, had a lot of junk cars, and, he had toilets and tubs and all kinds of, my dad collected a lot of stuff. So we always had to mound a dirt or mound a something, and so we would play King of the Hill. I don't know if y'all know what that is. So that's when you basically push each other off the hill, and whoever stays on the hill is King of the Hill. So I mean, simple stuff like that. But I reflect on those things, and those were good times. Yeah, there was no stress, no worries. It was a lot of bonding with my brothers. Yeah, those are fun times.
Growing up as a kid in California, I was really into lowriders. So yeah, I was always looking at lowriders, trying to buy magazines, even though my mom would throw them away. Building lowrider bikes, beach cruisers, going to car shows, bike shows. You know, just really trying to be a lowrider. And I would customize my bike so crazy, my beach cruisers so crazy that it was just something out of this world. Like I would find whatever I could find in alleys and back ways just to make it look cooler and make it look more unique. I would just throw it on there. And yeah, I still do that with classic cars, not just 20 some odd years older.
I grew up on the west side of San Antonio with my great-grandparents. We had chickens. We had chickens, and we didn't live on a ranch or a farm. We lived in the neighborhood. You know, we just had chickens back in the backyard. You know, chickens, ducks, goats at one time. So my experience was just always with animals. Which explains why I have so many animals now. I have my own zoo at my house. What type of animals? So I do have regular animals. I have 2 cats and a dog. But I also have some exotic ones. I have red-ear sliders. They're the aquatic turtles, the box turtle, ball python, ferret, tarantula, things like that. Well, they're all in their own cages. But,
Okay, so the question is hood struggle stories. So we're talking about just like, for example, like things we use for entertainment, or I wouldn't say I particularly, you know, I guess, you know, my parents, they definitely, you know, my father in particular, he definitely he busted his ass to provide for his family, you know what I mean? So it sounded like I was, you know, I grew up particularly in poverty, or, you know, lacking, you know, that's me being straight up, you know, probably like lower middle class or something like that, you know, but I guess, you know, I just remember, you know, I kind of live out in the country, you know, so I remember, I mean, I played outside a lot with my sister, you know, and even today, I spend a lot of time outdoors. I mean, I have memories of, you know, I you know, just like walking through the woods, you know, I really like, you know, just kind of looking at like insects and stuff like that, just observing and taking in the nature around me, you know, which are all our relatives again, you know, sitting out, you know, on bonfires with cousins and stuff, spending a lot of time with, you know, a very large extended family. Yeah. So I mean, that's, you know, spending time outdoors, and even today again, spending a lot of time outdoors is something that, you know, is very close to me. Yeah.
So answering last, I've had several minutes to think it over. I wouldn't really apply the word struggle to my upbringing. What I can say, coming from the Northeast, coming from New York State, being raised in an Italian family, I do remember there was a lot of food, a lot of very loud adults. My parents were very, very social. My parents would go out a lot. They weren't quiet people. They were very gregarious and extroverted within our family and their community and beyond. I suppose one thing that would be specific to my upbringing was I guess, earning a degree in architecture through sidewalk snow forts. As in, on the sidewalk in New York, between November and March, there's usually about maybe 4 to 7 feet of snow on the sidewalk. And it's just, that's the place where we got our creativity from. So, depending on what you design it to be, it could either be a military fort or an art gallery or...
So no regular snowman for y'all.
The snowman, yeah, but after a while, like your mind, in that climate, I guess it's maybe the claustrophobia or the cabin fever up there. That's one thing I do remember, is that the snow became, it wasn't just this cold substance that's outside that you avoided. It became, how you express yourself in your creativity.
So what was the coolest thing you built or you seen somebody build out of the snow?
I think the coolest thing I ever saw somebody build was they took the time to get a whole bunch of sticks and they actually built like a frame. It almost looked like a house. So they had like pine leaves, evergreen leaves for the floor, and then they had an actual window with a window frame. This is a snow fort, so this is built with snow that had been shoveled by an industrial snowplow vehicle. 4 o'clock in the morning, inside the road, somebody actually built. I do remember that they tied it together, made an actual window frame and a structure inside, with pine leaves for the floor. It actually kind of smelled nice in the morning.
Okay. Question. Who? Huh? Whatever.
Last question.
That's okay. Right. What are some home remedies that you guys can remember growing up? Like, for instance, when I was younger, Grandma used to always have us use aloe vera plants for everything.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. What were some remedies y'all had? Home remedies.
So growing up with my great-grandparents, my great-grandmother used a lot of what we call curanderismo, which is Mexican folk witchcraft sort of type thing, So I'm sure a lot of Chicanos know about, the whole egg thing, rubbing the egg all over. So basically, just saying a prayer, over you if you're sick or whatever, or they suspect you of having an evil eye or whatever. It's the cleansing. There was always an altar in my grandparents' house. I grew up Catholic, so it was an altar to the Virgin Mary and all the saints and all that. But the aloe vera, that's something that we always use also.
Question about that egg. Could you eat that egg afterwards? Or
No. After it was rubbed on you, it was cracked into a glass of water, and that's where the evil eye was trapped. Yeah.
My mom would put it under the bed when I slept because I would be real sick or something, and all of that.
So my mom would put it under the bed, crack it in the water, put it under the bed, and depending on how bad she thought it was, it might be 1 egg or 2 eggs. But I tell you, it really works. I swear it works. And then in the morning, she'd take it out, and they were literally like almost cooked. So you can do that now with an egg, put it in water and leave it on the counter, and it won't have that same effect. So whatever it's a combination of the prayer and everything, and going around your body and drawing that out. She still does that for me today, if I ask. So it's very powerful, and I believe it to actually work, because I've experienced that it does work even as an adult. So yeah. I also used to rub mud on myself for ant mites and things like that. I'm trying to think of what other home remedies. Yes. So you roll up the newspaper. Yes. If you have like water in your ear, plugged up ear, and you light the end of it, and it'll pop your ears. That happened a lot. Also, olive oil for when the kids were little or when we were young. My mom would heat her hands on the stove, rub olive oil on her, rub it all around her belly if we had like colic or were gassy, and then wrap us in some kind of towel or cloth diaper, and it's a cure-all. I mean, I used it on my kids too. So.
My grandma actually used to make her own medicine. It was an ointment that she used to make with lard, whiskey, camphor, and other ingredients that she learned from her mom, and her mom learned from her mom. And now I make it. So that's something that, it's an ointment for minor scrapes or burns, things like that.
I still use Campho-Phenique. It's in my medicine cabinet all the time. Campho-Phenique. I grew up on that stuff. So yeah, if you have a bite or an itch or something, it's got a funny smell, but it reminds me of my childhood, and I use it on my kids, and I use it today if I need it. It's called Campho-Phenique. Yeah.
Well, a lot of what you all said, you know, it's part of my childhood too. But I wanna go off of what Compañero Ye said. You know, as far as the curandero aspect of these hood remedies or these home remedies from when you're sick, a lot of them do have roots. You know, they go back generations in our family. You know, and they go back. You know, even trace back to our indigenous roots as well. A lot of the medicines that our ancestors used when the Europeans came over here, they thought if you had a headache, the devil was possessing you, and they'll drill a hole in your skull, and the devil will go out, and if you die, it's because, you know, the devil fucked you up in the head or something like that. You know, whereas opposed to our ancestors, they knew exactly what was wrong with you, and they had a whole intricate system of medicine and practices that would heal the body. And it's proven that our indigenous ancestors knew how to do brain surgery. They knew how to do dentistry. They knew how to do different things that would heal the body, but was ultimately viewed as witchcraft or as, you know, tools of the devil back in the day in the 1500s or whatever. You know, so a lot of that was destroyed with the European invasion and colonization of you know, this land and the destruction of our ancestors' civilizations. A lot of codexes, a lot of books, whole libraries were burnt to the ground because the friars and the conquistadores believed that was from the devil. So the very few of it, the very little of it that actually survived, you know, unfortunately, it's given, you know, it's given kind of like a negative connotation to it, or we call it like the hood, or we call it like, oh yeah, like you know, I don't know, we'll kind of make fun of it like if it's a joke, but a lot of our natural remedies do have very indigenous roots. So I just want to point that out. And for whoever's watching this, I know that if you all know what I'm talking about, or if you're interested in researching native medicine, there's a lot of books out there. You can go on Google. You could go to different little bookstores. I know Dead Tree Books has a big archive of natural native medicines, you know, from South Texas and Mexico and whatnot. So yeah, if y'all are interested in native medicine and spirituality, I definitely recommend that y'all research that. But my personal favorite hood remedy or whatever was my grandma. She would get big nugs of marijuana, and she would put it in a jar, and then she would get rubbing alcohol, and she would put the rubbing alcohol in there, you know, and she would rub it on her knuckles, you know, for the arthritis. But she had a big plant right? So I would just pick off of it. And I'll be like, yeah, nah, I'm making a backtrack now. And then like, I would pinch off with the nose, and I'll be like, all right. So that was my all-time favorite. The herbal healing. I would heal my grandma, I'd heal myself.
Remedies growing up, I mean, absolutely same as you said, aloe vera. Again, with those memories of, playing outside, as a child, and, if we like scrape our knee or scrape our elbows or get a cut anywhere else, like my grandma would, on the porch, always, posted up, had the aloe vera, you know what I mean? And it was always reliable. Yeah, I recall aloe vera very much so. That was definitely, a home remedy that I can very much recall being present in my upbringing, And as of late, I guess, in our decolonization journey, like the comrade was saying about, these herbal remedies or these plant remedies, I know a number of, the members in our group can attest to the healing capabilities of substances like psilocybin, mushrooms, for, inward reflection, coming to terms, with psychological healing, looking at traumas from a very objective lens and such. So, I mean, that's very much something that is, again, stigmatized by the idea of it being a so-called drug, you know what I mean? Which again is a part of the colonial mindset of seeing us as something separate from the earth. So yeah, that's definitely a remedy that I know a few of us in the group have come to embrace in our adult life. Yeah.
So I would say not really any kind of specific folk or herbal remedies where I was born and raised, except to say our approach to health, coming as a person who was raised in a frozen climate, is the ongoing adaptation to the climate and your surroundings. So thinking back on it, we were outside a lot in temperatures that ranged from 20 degrees above to 20 degrees below zero. That's just part of our upbringing. So playing outside, being part of the frozen environment, that actually conditioned, acclimatized us to preventing illness. Because as a small child, RSV, that sort of thing is very common in cold weather. But because our parents, in moderation, conditioned us to be outside when we didn't want to be, I feel like I'm a much healthier person today because of how I was raised that way. So I feel healthier, more conditioned. And as we got to be teenagers, it was very common in my neighborhood that snow shoveling would be done from about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, so that we could all have that completed to go to work or school, etc., what have you. That's when the day began, and you were outside, and before you know it, by 6 a.m., the temperature was still freezing, but you were in a t-shirt. Because the sweat you had built up, the exertion you had caused yourself, overcame the actual need to insulate and keep heat inside yourself. So yeah, no folk remedies in my upbringing, but I really appreciate listening and learning from the compañeros assembled here, and the other communities that we're connected to. All those different cultural ways and paths.
So before we go, I need contact information. How can, if anybody wants to join, what do they do? How do they contact you guys?
You can look us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, the Autonomous Brown Berets of San Antonio, Tejas. So if you have a Facebook page, if you have Instagram, look us up, Autonomous Brown Berets San Anto. And we also have an email there.
It's right there.
Oh. autonomousbrownberet@gmail.com.
Cool, y'all heard it here first. So if you would like to join, please go ahead, don't be shy. Go ahead and check that out. Again, y'all, it's Radioactive. I thank my guests for coming and seeing me today. Man, I mean, y'all didn't have to come, and I'm glad y'all did.
Can I give a shout out real quick?
Yes, yes.
I can just give a real quick shout out.
Great.
Again, to our friend, our comrade Mampacha, yesterday was actually the 1-year anniversary that they were kidnapped by ICE, you know. We always hold them in our hearts and we give them all the support that we can to this very day. Also, I want to shout out to the Carizo Comecrudo tribe, if anybody's watching, to support the cause of the Texas Carizo Comecrudo tribe down at the border, protect indigenous burial sites, protect the Butterfly Center, protect indigenous land at the Yalui village. Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to say before we go?
Don't forget Charles Roundtree. Don't forget Marquis Jones. Don't let their names disappear.
All right, y'all. It's Radioactive, y'all. Yep. Peace.